Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Logos Project. This is your host, Dom. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a review of the books I've read during the month of November. I started all of these during the month of November and finished them during the month of November, except for one of them. And that is this one right here that I'm going to start with. It's called Church, Ecumenism, and Politics by Joseph Ratzinger. It's an amalgam of several essays and uh, various topics on which he wrote and put together into one volume. So I've kind of been chipping away at it for a few months, but I finished it this month and strongly recommend. Just, great Ratzinger book. Even though the writings are disparate, they are unified, on the themes of church, ecumenism, and politics, and how ecumenism is relevant to ecclesiology and vice versa, and also how ecclesiology is relevant to politics, right, and vice versa. So definitely recommend Church, Ecumenism, Politics by Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI. That was the first one I finished, and I read this short one here called The Dialectics of Secularization. It's a very short book. The subtitle is On Reason and Religion. It's basically a debate that took place between Jürgen Habermas and Joseph Ratzinger, and I read Habermas's lecture as well as Ratzinger's, but of course Ratzinger's was the one I was really looking at, and the whole thing's highlighted all over the place, right? It's a really good topic on the pre-political values of democratic state, basically, right? And the conversation about the concepts of rights and freedom and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the topics covered in here, by the way, this is what the book looks like. A lot of topics covered in here are also covered in Church, Ecumenism, and Politics. Um, I'm learning a lot about Ratzinger's thought on the relationship between church and state, the values of the modern state, right? Its tendency to be ideological, its potential to open itself up to the church, questions about liberalism, things like that. And I am seeing a difference between him and some other writers, but I'm not going to talk on that yet. I'm going to eventually make some videos on that if you guys are interested. But it's definitely fascinating, and I am learning so much. The way I think about politics and ecumenism, ecclesiology, everything is being clarified. He really helps setting down principles, right? Principles with which to think that I find extremely helpful and enlightening. It really kind of, you know, uh, organizes my thoughts in a really helpful way. That's why he's so good with fundamental principles, right? Fundamental theology, things like that. The other book I read this month was Jesus, the Apostles, and the Early Church. I actually, now that I think about it, I did start this the month before. That being said, I read most of it this month. I kind of was bogged down in the beginning because there's some really good audiences. This is a group of audiences that he gave when he was Pope on Wednesdays, but there was some really good audiences in the beginning that I kind of read over and over again and used for some of my classes that I teach. Anyway, this is a great book to, if you want to do a study on a particular apostle. He kind of puts together in one short, pithy audience all the relevant information and some theological commentary. So definitely recommend. I'll be using this as a reference for sure. So that was a great Ratzinger book. Um, you know, a book that I read that was not theological nor philosophical, but kind of for fun on the side, was this book right here. It was a crazy book. I didn't expect it to be so interesting. Um, it's it reads almost like a young adult book, but it's not. I mean, it's for adults. There's some adult themes in it, but it reads a lot like Hunger Games and I don't know, Dune, Star Wars a little bit. It's like a dystopian sci-fi, political intrigue, and but anyway, this is the book I'm talking about. It's called Red Rising, and I'm not going to lie, it was a lot of fun. This was pure adrenaline rush fun. So I'm going to be reading the second one for sure and keep you guys posted on what I think. So this is the kind of fun books I read on the side. as I'm reading these other heavy theology volumes, right? So this absolutely loved, and I'm going to keep reading. Pure fun. That's the way I describe it. Just pure fun. Nothing serious, but definitely fun. I'm making my way through uh, the novels of Brandon Sanderson as well, and there's some really good ones occasionally. But I'm trying to read all the relevant ones to understand his larger um, fiction world called the Cosmere. And so I read this one. This is the first one he published. It's called Elantris. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like it. I can see the things in this novel that he uses later on in later novels that work really well. I'm not faulting him for this book not being good because it was his first that was published. He himself admits it's rough. The prose is not very good. He doesn't say anything about the plot as far as I have heard him say anything, but I thought the plot was not good. Like there's a lot of ad hoc moments that seem to fit a plot that was imposed, almost forced on the circumstances that he was working with. The idea is cool, right? It's some kind of reverse energy. There's like a city of zombies that are, dead but alive, and a kind of magic that has to do with the layout of the landscape, of the geography of the area in which the story takes place. Anyway, read it if you want to find out more about it. I didn't like it. I didn't think it was a good book. But again, Sanderson has written stuff that are page turners, and I can see some of the themes here. So I'm not gonna hold it against him. It's his first book, fair enough. I just wanted to read it because it supposedly, I've been told, it ties into further books later on. Anyway, so that was, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was fun at times, but I mean, I would not recommend the book. But it was fun at times. There's some characters that are memorable that I think it's good that I was introduced to, and one in particular that I'm going to see later on in other of his books. Okay, finally, we come to the book that the main book I read this month that I thoroughly enjoyed. It was much more intricate than I expected it to be, very complex in certain parts. I'm going to have to reread it, but I think I can say with confidence that I understood everything I read, although um, it would help to reread it. Definitely one of the more difficult books of theology I've read in a while. Reminds me a little bit of the difficulty level of things like Ratzinger's eschatology book. Um, but anyway, I'll just get to it. It is the first of the twins by Henri de Lubac. It's the first that he calls these two the twins. Here's the other one if you want to see this one right here. The first twin is called Augustinianism and Modern Theology. The second twin is called The Mystery of the Supernatural. I'm going to read The Mystery of the Supernatural in December and let you know what I think about that. But Augustinianism and Modern Theology is the one I read this month. And it was difficult at times. I'm not going to lie. But again, I think I understood everything he's saying, I've marked the heck out of this book, and it's going to become a frequent reference. But final verdict is I absolutely loved it. I mean, just for the beginning, I mean, the whole section, middle to the end, is very involved in uh, the scholasticism of Cajetan, Suarez, um, some Scotists and stuff like that. And it's fascinating. And I loved those parts, but I really, really loved the beginning of this book, the first half, which focuses on Augustine, Baius, and Jansen or Jansenius. And that to me was the most enjoyable part. I mean, especially understanding Augustine theology. And what's fascinating is that this has helped me understand a section of Ratzinger's The Spirit of the Liturgy much better. There's a whole section in his book, The Spirit of the Liturgy, where he talks about the exitus reditus, freedom and grace. And it clicked when I read it, thanks to this book by de Lubac. Because a proper understanding of Augustine will get you a long way in understanding what Ratzinger's vision is, right? His project, because Ratzinger is very influenced by Augustine. And this is something that fascinates me because understanding Augustine properly and in not like Bias or Jansen, but like St. Thomas, even though there's definitely differences, right? But understanding the real Augustine is what a lot of ink has been spilt over, a lot of egos and a lot of anathemas, right? So understanding Augustine's important, but de Lubac here helped me understand Augustine in a way that actually shed light on a lot of Ratzinger's thinking, which further sheds light on how Augustine is understood by Bonaventure and Thomas, and how you can understand Augustine in light of other church fathers. So it's just been extremely helpful. So I really loved this book. I'm so happy I read it. I feel a genuine sense of accomplishment, and I feel better equipped because of it. And I have written all over it, and I will definitely be using it as a reference. But my reading of de Lubac on this topic continues, and I've started Lawrence Feingold's book on the natural desire to see God. And I have Stephen Long's Natura Pura book as well. And I'm a couple chapters into that. I'm kind of reading a whole bunch of things at once, but I'm just really enjoying the topic. And it's so much nicer to be able to just read on my own and not be involved in the polemics necessarily. It helps me keep a level headed and try, I try to be objective in this conversation. I really loved David L. Schindler's introduction to the mystery of the supernatural. What's fascinating about this, one more comment here, as I was reading the mystery of the supernatural, I realized, because I bought this used, and I don't know who owned it before me, but based on the notes penciled in on the margins, it seems to me it was owned by someone who was very critical of de Lubac and who bought it in order to understand de Lubac, but from an opposing viewpoint. And so it's very fascinating to be able to read it with those squiggles in the margins, and trying to kind of reconstruct the thought process of the previous owner. So that's really interesting. I don't know why I shared that tangent, but that was just the introduction. I haven't read this yet, but I read the intro and I really loved it. I will let you guys know at the end of December about this one. And that'll be the twins, as de Lubac calls them. And I'm making my way through all of the writings of de Lubac. I'm almost done with all the writings of Ratzinger. But, this process takes time. I just keep reading one book at a time. And as long as I'm enjoying myself and sharing with others what I learn, that's the whole point, right? Anyway, so that's my book haul, my monthly book video for November, right? So on January 1st, probably, or 2nd, because New Year's, right? I will do a video on the books I've read in December. And I'll just keep doing this. I think it's a good tradition. It keeps me on track, and I get to share the fun stuff I've been learning about with you all. I see Haley in the chat. What's up, Haley? Well, I think that's all I had to say, right? So Elantris, not a fan, but fair enough. I get it's his first book, and he's got some good stuff later on. Red Rising, pure fun. Not gonna lie, nothing profound, just straight up fun, right? Jesus, the Apostles, and the Early Church, the Audiences of Benedict, really good reference. Gems throughout, but not one of his impactful, intentional books like Spirit Liturgy or Introduction to Christianity or Eschatology, obviously. Then the Dialectics of Secularization, again, amazing lecture by Ratzinger there. And then Church, Ecumenism, and Politics, just gold throughout, like, cover to cover, amazing stuff. I mean, it's Ratzinger. I'm never disappointed. And then, of course, Augustinianism and Modern Theology, which is the book of the month for me. It's definitely a highlight. Very much loved it, especially the Augustine parts. I feel like I'm really starting to see, the bigger vision of St. Augustine, ironically through the misinterpretation of Augustine of people like Baius and Jansen. Well, that's all I got. Thanks, guys, for watching. If you enjoy these videos, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and consider supporting me at patreon.com/thelogosprojects. And you can check out my blog if you want to sign up for a class on ecclesiology or Mariology or world religions and Christianity, things like that. Oh, and I also teach Latin if you're interested. So without further ado, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. God bless.